my mental health at Harvard wasn't great. And frankly, it isn't for most people. I was trying to find a statistic. When I was a first year, one of our professors told us that 90% of Harvard Law School first years experience signs of depression.
Welcome one, welcome all to your space for everything empowerment. I'm your host, Tarik Williams, and not only I am Vision of Hope, but we are Vision of Hope. It's not just about one person, ladies and gentlemen, everybody here. It's about all individuals here getting better, getting greater every single day. Once again, this is your space for everything empowerment. I am your host. You're the listener. You're here to be empowered. Let's get after it. As you all know, and maybe you don't know this, but it is Mental Health Awareness Day. And mental health is a real thing. And you're here, you're trying to figure out what it looks like to protect your mental health. You're thinking about what it looks like for you to go through your day to day and talk about and discuss and prioritize your mental health. Now, this is a really cool episode for the Speak Your Vision podcast because I get to have one of my great friends on today and you get to discuss his story. And I really wanted him to discuss his journey, how he got to where he is as a lawyer. I'll introduce him a little bit here in a second. But I really wanted to introduce him here for this specific episode because you know this is your space for empowerment, discussing mental health. But this is a really cool episode for me. He doesn't know this yet. He's getting his introduction for the first time right now. But this is on our podcasting platforms, everywhere you listen to your podcast. This is a special episode for me because this is our 100th episode of the Speak Your Vision podcast. And today, I'm so lucky and so happy to have one of my good friends on here today. Harvard graduate, senior associate at Decker, corporate law, Derek Manners. Thank you so much for joining us today, man.
Thanks for having me on, and I'm honored to be your 100th guest. That's crazy, or at least on your 100th show.
Yeah, man, it's been a journey for sure. You know, as you know, I miss a lot of phone calls in our friend group, right? Because I'm doing this and working on building the brand and all those different things. But I don't know if I know a harder worker than you, my friend.
Well, I appreciate it.
So I'm excited to get into your story, but on the podcast, we set the tone with one word. All right. And so language is important. Language is important to you. And so if you could describe how you go into every workday in one word, what's one word that gets you prepared? What's one word that describes how you go into your workday?
So, having listened to your podcast, I had a little bit of time to think about it. And I also feel like this is a little bit of a cheating word, but I'm going to say determination.
Okay. So,
go
ahead, please. Yeah.
I was just going to say, yeah. And the reason I feel like it's a little bit of a cheating word is because it encompasses a lot of aspects of the way that I go about my day. So obviously it includes focus, it includes goal setting, it includes prioritization. But ultimately, that sort of all rolls up into being highly determined to have a good outcome and to get the things done that I need to get done that day.
So I'm gonna jump here a little bit. Determination for me, like Derek, I know you. You know what I mean. You're taking time out of doing work to be here on the show, right? I feel like for you, determination is a given. So I wanted to have a little bit deeper on determination because as someone who has had, a childhood with a bunch of trials and tribulations, as someone, who has albinism, we'll get into the blindness and those different things later on. As someone that's gone through the struggles of Harvard Law, which we'll get into very shortly, obviously you have to be determined, right? So I guess let me flip the question a little bit. What don't people understand about determination? Because people say they're determined all the time, but they're really not, right? So why aren't then, what don't some people understand about determination?
Yeah. So determination, I think a lot of people have determination to do something, but it ebbs and flows and it wanes, right? They don't have an intensity about it. And I think that that's when I say determination, I mean like highly determined, highly motivated, highly focused, and figuring out what your obstacles are to achieving the things that you're trying to get done in a day or in a week or in a year or in a lifetime. And just relentlessly going after it and
Mm,
get knocking down barriers and getting to the things that you want to get to. And I think that that's it's not that people I don't think are determined at times, but maintaining that level of intensity and
mm,
determination on a consistent daily, hourly basis and really utilizing the time and resources that you have at your disposal is something that I just, for a lot of people that don't quite hit as hard as they want or achieve as much as they want, I think that that's usually one of the biggest issues is that they've got other things that are distracting them or that, are sort of competing priorities that just make it hard for them to stay determined all day long to get things done.
mm, mm. I'm not gonna change your word, but I am gonna change your word. Uh, because you said something else. You used this word twice. You said intensity. Um, I like that because that adds sustainability to determination. And let's be real here for a second. Like when we talk about being intense and intense in your focus, intense in going towards the goal, intense in going towards the dream. I'm calling out the audience right now. Audience listening. The only thing that there are people out there that the only thing they do intense is camping. let's just keep it real for a second, right? And so I like how you mentioned the focus and that it's an intensity that you bring to the table every single day. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think that you have, but it's not just intensity for like intensity's sake. It has to be focused
Mm,
and driven towards specific things that you're trying to do, which is why I use the word determination. But
yeah.
but there really is it's sort of a mindset that involves intensity, goal setting, prioritization, focus, and determination. I mean, it's sort of all pieces of the same sort of mindset that I think you have to have each day if you want to be successful.
Mm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Absolutely. Absolutely. So there's a few elephants in the room that we have to get into. I think whenever somebody sees the word or the university, the school, they see Harvard, everybody gets excited, right? Because it's like, oh, like Harvard is the amazing, the gold standard, right?
Yep.
But there's a certain level of focus, there's a certain level of determination, there's a certain level of intensity that you got to bring to the table if you're going to be successful. But at the same time, you got to protect your mental health. So, walk us through how you were able to take care of your mental health and as well as being successful at Harvard at the same time.
Yeah, I mean, candidly, my mental health at Harvard wasn't great,
Mm,
and frankly, it isn't for most people. I actually, so I was trying to find a statistic when I was a first year. One of our professors told us that 90% of Harvard Law School first years experienced depression, and then or signs of depression, and then a number of them got over it, and then a number of them it took years, and a number of them they never really did, and they developed substance abuse issues and had all sorts of issues as lawyers even after law school.
mm,
um, so I was trying to find that statistic to be able to like actually cite it and not just from like memory. um, and I ran across a story from the Harvard Law Record from August 31st 2017 that the title of it is "One L's Prioritize Mental Health," and it's sort of a letter to incoming first years of the 2017 class, and it runs through some like pretty grim statistics and stories about how people struggle. So I think that everybody, when you are in a high pressure place like Harvard, especially a graduate program, or even in corporate law like I'm in, or in other places, I think mental health is a spectrum, and I think so candidly, I mean, I struggled, right? Like I had to go to counseling. I definitely drank more. I made some questionable life choices otherwise. Had a lot of relationship stress. Did not sleep well. I mean, I didn't wouldn't say I was a picture of mental health in law school, but I got help when I needed it. I talked to friends. I talked to my friends Gabe and Candace every single night, almost on the way home from the library when I was usually going to get a hamburger like 2 in the morning, which is another issue. I overate.
Mm,
um
mm.
but I tried to exercise some. I tried to get caught up on sleep on Sundays. I did go to some counseling. And so, I did things as I could to try to decompress and to have outlets for the high pressure situation that exists in law school. But it was a struggle. And I think if I could go back and redo it, I probably wouldn't say yes to everything. I probably wouldn't take on quite as much. I think it made me a better lawyer, all the things that I did and all the experiences I had, but I'm not sure that it was worth some of the um, late nights and stress that came along with some of the experiences. I think some of them were a lot more valuable than others.
Mm. Wow. All right. A lot to unpack there. Um, the fact that it's a spectrum. So would you say that every day was a little bit different for you mentally and how you were able to just get through the day?
Yeah, I mean, there were some days that, I would just be laser focused and really Monday through Friday, I would pretty much be laser focused on work. So I would wake up super early, usually. Well, take that back. Some days I would wake up at like 5, anywhere between 5 and like 10 minutes before class started at 9 or 10 or whenever it started. Um, and then I would generally be up until at least 1 or 2. And I would be pretty much consistently working, except for, occasionally I would watch a show while I eat dinner with my partner.
Mm.
Um, but otherwise, yeah, like Monday through Friday I just was laser focused because I just felt like I had to be. I didn't feel like I had a choice in order to keep up with the demands of the program that I was in and all the other extracurricular things I was doing. And then Saturdays, I would also generally work pretty hard, like 12 hours. And a lot of times on Sundays, I would need to work hard, want to work hard, but I just couldn't. I just didn't have it. I would sleep a lot. I would get caught up on sleep, and I would still work like 4 or 5 hours, usually after sleeping all day. Um, but yeah, I mean, it was, so I would say during the week, I would just focus and I would just get it done, regardless of how I felt, regardless of what else was going on, and sort of ignore any, frustrations or stress that I was having. And then I would sort of crash a little bit on Sundays usually.
So what worked? Um, you mentioned a lot of the different things that you were doing that wasn't going well. Clearly, Harvard saw this as an issue. If there's an article about this, what worked for you?
Yeah, the thing that kept me grounded was I have a really strong support system. A lot of it is sort of adopted family. I also am pretty close with my mom and my dad. I would say I'm more close with my dad now than I was in law school. I've always been pretty close with my mom. Well, since undergrad, and we talk almost every day. So I think that helps a lot. And like I said, I actually saw a counselor once a week for in my second year of law school. I go into Boston. There's a free program, and Harvard's in Cambridge, so I had to like actually take like an hour commute total, like 30 minutes there, 30 minutes back, and then plus the session. So it was like an actual chunk of time. But I found just talking to like somebody, for me at least, and getting some perspective and real whenever I would sort of lay out why I was stressed out, it was like I sounded so whiny. I was like, oh, my life is so hard. I'm in like the best law school on planet Earth, and I've got all these great job opportunities that I'm having to apply for, all these options. I don't know what to choose. Like, to some degree, the pressure that you feel is kind of artificial. And so when you talk to
Mm,
people about it, especially like people that are trained and ask you probing questions, you can kind of take a step back and just be like, look, like, things are hard, but all in all, like I'm in a good place. And for some people, they can do that on their own. For me, I needed to talk to somebody to really elicit that thought process. Um, but I think just taking stock, however you do that, and realizing that things can be worse, and there's things that you can do to make things easier, and having some perspective is really what helped a lot.
I don't know if there's anything stronger than perspective and how we look at situations, but you mentioned another word and mentioning that pressure can be artificial. I love that. There's a reason why I start off the podcast with one word in the beginning and one word at the end. Words only have the power that we give them. So if we build up this pressure to be something that it doesn't have to be, it's going to feel like a giant weight that we can't lift versus having perspective and recognizing that you can lift the weight to get to where you want to be. I like that a lot, how it can be artificial. I think that's strong.
Yeah, and I think that that's what I've kind of learned, even in and I know we're kind of skipping ahead a little bit, but my job is very demanding too, right?
Yeah.
I often work 12, 14, 16. I mean, I've worked a 36-hour, day, right? Day and a half straight. And and I've had really busy months and stuff where it's just nonstop, very little sleep. And keeping perspective about why you're doing that, and that it's a choice that you're making, and that there are things that you don't have to do everything that you were asked to do. And which is why I mentioned prioritization a lot. I think that has helped me a lot in dealing with the stress of the job, is sort of the tools that I learned in law school to cope with some of the artificial stress there, to help cope with the artificial stress that exists in sort of a high-powered corporate job as well.
And you mentioned your support system that you had in place. You didn't feel like you had to go through it alone.
Yeah, no, I mean, I don't think anybody can go through stress and trials alone. I mean, I think some people do, I guess, and I would love to hear how they do that. Because for me, like, I'm talking to my friends, and even if I'm not talking about what's stressing me out, just spending quality time with people that I like and that care about me and that I care about, it really makes a big difference. The other thing I would also make a pitch for is doing things for other people, even when you're really stressed out, is really empowering and brings a lot of joy to life and helps me decompress a lot. So I try to do a lot of pro bono hours at the firm. I've always hit over 100. There have been years I've hit over 300.
Wow.
And being involved in helping people improve their lives, or in important projects for nonprofit organizations and things like that, even when you're really busy and really stressed and having like personal things that are weighing you down, like family stuff or whatever, just doing some good in the world, I think, can have a really empowering impact and really make you feel a lot better. And also, again, give you some of that perspective that maybe your problems aren't so bad.
A while ago now, quite a while ago now, I had our buddy Mahmoud on, Syed, and when he gave his one word, he was like, a lot of people will say grit and all these different things, but I haven't accomplished anything in my life without support. And I'm thinking about him right now because you were a mentor of his, and he discussed how he probably wouldn't have gotten through Harvard without you. And he in turn mentors other people and like finds and goes out of his way. So it really need to hear you speak about that and what it means to help other people become successful. You're doing pro bono work and giving back to your communities at the law firm, and whatever that may look like. I think a lot of times we get clouded with feeling like we have to go through everything on our own. But there's something to be said when other people lift you up, as well as being able to lift up others. If it's at your law school, or if it's at your job right now. And we're going to get into that a little bit. But I guess when you think about being able to lift up others, but then still making time to be determined in your role at your job, like how do you balance all that, but then still take care of you?
Yeah, no, it's a good question. I mean, like I said, I genuinely find a lot of joy from helping other people in the pro bono cases that I take on. I do a lot of immigration stuff and a lot of disability rights stuff.
Mm.
And that brings me a lot of personal joy. Um, and I find it fun and helpful to be able to make a positive impact. But a lot of times I'm busy, and so I try to make sure that I prioritize things that are important. So, like right now, my dad's having some vision issues. He's had type 2 diabetic and had a kidney transplant, has had some other issues, and he's having to learn how to, function in the world as somebody with low vision. And so, that's just my priority right now.
Mm.
And so if that means, being instead of responding to an email within 5 minutes of it coming in, I respond in an hour because I'm doing something for my dad, or if it means going over this weekend and helping him go through his mail, because he can't really see it that well and hasn't
Right.
really figured out how to deal with that stuff non-visually.
Yeah.
Um, that's just my priority is. And so, but sometimes my priority is spending time with friends. Sometimes it's calling my mom when I'm having lunch, and so I think being intentional about um, what you feel like is important moment to moment in your day,
Mm.
and not having every second of that be like an obsession about your career or whatever it is that you're doing, but having a balance, right? It's the same with dieting, right? I mean, if you cannot just eat chicken and broccoli every single day or whatever. I mean, I guess there are some people that do that, but I can't. I think that's
Yeah.
crazy.
Yeah.
Um, you know, but you also can't eat donuts every day either. Like
Right.
you have to have balance, and I think the same is true with being intentional about your time. And a lot of it should go to, chicken and vegetables and whatever and healthy stuff. But, you should have a donut once in a while. And same with spending time with friends or working out or playing basketball or playing video games or watching a show or whatever it is that, is going to make you happy in that moment.
You mentioned we're jumping around a little bit because there's so many unique perspectives about your story and the things that you're doing. And you mentioned your dad's vision loss that he's going through right now, and we haven't talked about yours. So, so you have albinism. Would you mind sharing with the audience what that is, what that's been like for you, and then from there, your success mixed in with being low vision and blind?
Yeah, for sure. So I was born with albinism. It's a genetic disease. My dad does not have albinism, but has the gene, right? A recessive gene.
Mm.
Um, and my mom has the active gene, so she has albinism as well. Um, and so I have albinism, which basically just means I don't have pigment. Don't have pigment in my skin. Don't have pigment in my hair. Don't have pigment in my retinas, which is what causes the vision issues. And my sister does not have albinism. So there's like a 50-50 chance if both parents have the gene that you will have albinism, basically.
Mm.
Um, and so what that means practically is I can see about 1/10 of a normal person's visual range. So, if somebody is uh, 200 feet away from something, I have to be 20 feet away to be able to see it in the same level of detail.
Hmm.
Um, and, it's interesting, like, again, going back to perspective, like,
Yeah.
I think that I've always been pretty smart. I've always been very academically successful. I was valedictorian in my high school. I was debate captain. I was academic team captain, etc. Um, and I, at the same time, while doing all of that and being very successful and doing well on standardized tests, etc. Um, two things. So one, I was told by a guidance counselor at my high school that I should get a sub minimum wage job, which is a job that pays less than the minimum wage, which is allowed under a law passed in the 30s for people with disabilities. Because she said that I wouldn't be able to go to college and be successful, and that I needed to start getting work experience so that I could figure out how I was going to be able to support myself.
Because of your
Um,
albinism.
yeah, because of my vision. That even though I was having all of this academic success in high school, she just, in her view, it just wasn't going to translate to college because of my vision.
Mm.
And so I got a sub minimum wage job in high school, making $2.25 an hour. It's funny, I was actually promoted to assistant manager. So I had the ability to hire and fire people who were in college making $11 an hour. at the same place that I was making $2.25 as their boss.
Wow. Wow.
um,
Okay.
so artificial, low
I mean,
expectations.
it's just wild, right? The
Yeah.
expectations that somebody will put onto you, right? I think the
Yeah.
world tries to put us in a box for whatever it is, if it's blindness, neurodivergence, the list goes on. And for you, someone, your guidance counselor who's supposed to want the best for you said, Derek, college is not going to be your thing.
Yeah. Go
Sorry,
go
not
work for
sorry.
go work for slave wages at a bookstore.
Wow. That's wild. So you were making $2.25 an hour.
Yeah, and the minimum wage I think at the time was 7.25, which is what I think it still is. So I was paid well below the minimum wage, and well below what the people that I was working alongside were making, and eventually the people I was supervising.
Wow. Okay. Okay. So you've turned that into flipping the script, going to college, after that going to Harvard Law. Now you work in corporate law. We'll get into some of the specifics here about your experience during your workday. That's how we started the episode. But you know, there's a level of success that I've achieved in my life that I don't think would be possible if I didn't go through some of the struggles that I did. Um, just being honest, like becoming blind at 16 really shaped me to not take anything for granted. You never know what life is going to throw at you. And so what happens is you have perspective on those situations and you move forward through them. But the thing is, life happens to everybody. For me, it's blindness. For you, it's, for you, it was your low vision and blindness. But for everybody has something. And I would say that my blindness might not, I know that it's not the most difficult thing I've gone through at this point, right? So to bring all of this together, would you say you have some life experiences that shaped you to be able to achieve some of the success you have now?
Yeah, it's interesting because I've been thinking about this a lot because I knew you'd ask this question, and I'm a little torn, and I'll tell you why.
Mm.
So on the one hand, having gone to Harvard Law School, I've seen a lot of people who, from the outside at least, seem like they've had very easy lives, right? They grew up rich. I guess their parents probably worked a lot, so maybe they didn't get as much attention as they would have liked, and things like that. And I'm sure there's some struggles there, right? That I just don't know about. But by and large, I think that there are a number of people that are just, born pretty wealthy, have a pretty good childhood, and are pretty successful. And so I don't know if you have to go through struggle to be successful, but I do think what I do think is that struggle can give you a lot of perspective and make you more grounded and more humble, and appreciative of success when you do achieve it. Um, I think that's my view. I used to have the view that, I wouldn't be where I was if I wasn't born blind, if I didn't have all these people telling me I couldn't do stuff, because that's really put a chip on my shoulder. And in some ways, I think that's also true, right? Like for me personally, when I started in big law, and really even when I got to Harvard, I was like, look, I have to work 10 times harder than everybody else here because I have to prove myself, because there's certain things I can't do. There's certain things I can't do as fast or as well because of my vision. And so I need to be present 24/7. I need to make other sacrifices. I need to do self-study even when it's not required or when nobody's asking me to do it, so that I can be ahead of the game. And I don't think I would have done those things if if I hadn't grown up poor, if I hadn't been born blind, etc. But I don't know if it's necessary to be successful. I think it's necessary to have perspective and to be interesting, if that makes sense.
It does, but you said something, and I want to dive even deeper into this story. And you kind of just said it very quickly. You mentioned that you grew up poor.
Oh yeah. My parents, my parents met, I think in third grade. Um, and they had me when they were 18. They just graduated high school earlier in the year, when they had me in December. Um, and so, and neither of them grew up particularly wealthy. My mom was probably lower middle class, and my dad was certainly like working class or low class. Um, and like my grandmother, for example, on my dad's side was worked in the cafeteria. My grandfather was disabled at a fairly young age, like I think 40 something or 50 something. And before that was, like janitor, drove a backhoe, that sort of thing.
Mhm.
Um, and so my parents, when they had me when they were 18, they sort of had to figure things out on their own. They had to take out a bunch of student loans. They got master's degrees in
Mm.
social work. They started a business for my mom because she had a lot of barriers to practicing as a social worker, a lot of discrimination for being a blind woman in particular.
Mm.
Um, she got better grades than my dad, but my dad would always get job offers, and my mom like had struggled to get job offers because they didn't think she could do the job. So they started a business for her, and it took a while for it to be successful. Eventually, it was pretty successful, and so like in my high school years, they started getting, I would call us like middle class or even upper middle class. Um, but before that, like we moved around a bunch. At one point we lived when I was a little kid, we lived in a trailer with like no running water and had to like go outside to go to the bathroom. Um, like like real poor. We're on Section 8 housing, food stamps. I mean, you name it. When they were in like getting their master's degree and in school. So yeah, I think that shaped me quite a bit, even more so than my blindness to some degree, because I saw my parents, and how education and hard work paid off for them. And I think that's what motivated me to go and get a law degree, because I saw the like transformative effect it had on their personal well-being and on our family.
When you look back and think about some of those moments, do they inspire you to continue staying determined?
Yeah, I know, definitely. I mean, I think so. What's crazy, right, is I'm 37. I will be 38 in December. At my age, my parents had a 20-year-old and an 18-year-old, which means for the last 20 years, if I had done what my parents had done, I would have had to have tried to raise two children while trying to go to law school and like work in this crazy job that I work in, which is like mind-boggling. I don't think I could have done it. And so, and my parents, they started a successful business, which I think in many ways is very similar to the type of work that I do. It was like a 24/7 thing that they had to like really work hard at. There was high reward, high risk. Making customers happy is totally different from what I do, but in some ways it's similar in the way that they had to work at it. And I just don't know if I could have done it with kids. Yeah, I mean, as bad as I ever think my day is, I'm like, I don't have, the struggle. My parents had crippling student loans and two kids. Like, I'm doing great.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Absolutely. And that brings me back to that word perspective, right? So to paint a picture, a real estate agent, let's say a real estate agent that typically sells residential housing, they sell one house, and I got to raise the prices for this analogy because of the way because of how things are these days.
Yeah.
But let's have the resident. Let's say I can't talk. We'll edit that part out. Anyways, the residential real estate agent that sells a house for 2.8 million and then sells another house for, and the lowest sell is about, let's call it, gosh, we live in interesting times right now. Let's call it 140,000, right? Everything else is in that $400,000 or $500,000 range. And so I bring that up to say we have different highs and different lows in our lives. And the highs are never like those can be an outlier and how great certain things are, and the low is also the outlier, right? It's really in that middle ground. And so if you want to have that great success, it takes consistency, it takes staying focused on your goals, it takes prioritizing you, because your highs, you want to have more of those for sure, but the lows are never as low as you think they are, and you got to always work hard to get better. And I think it's all about perspective, recognizing the perspective you have when you have those great moments, when you have those low moments, having perspective so that you can get to whatever next looks like for you.
Yeah, and I think perspective is important for a couple of things. One, I think it's important for prioritization because when you say focus on you, I mean, one of the things I think people struggle with and don't do a particularly good job of is even when they are focused on themselves, it's picking which thing that they're going to do for themselves that's going to be the most rewarding. And I think that keeping perspective and like what your ultimate goal is, and also having some delayed gratification and working towards like moving things around as things change, right? Like I may wake up in a day and I think, okay, I really need to get XYZ done. But my dad calls and he has some issue. And to me, that becomes more important than whatever I thought I needed to get out by 11 a.m.,
Mhm.
or a client who I am trying to pitch for a really big project comes to me with a fairly small question that's not going to take me that long. And I want to make them happy. So I'm going to push something back that I was planning to get out first because this client, I'm trying to pitch them for more work. And so I want to be hyper responsive to them so that I keep getting to the point where I can build some goodwill with them and get this new project. And then I can kind of put them on the back burner to some degree while I'm continuously trying to make everybody happy, and getting everything that I want out of my day in terms of building relationships and building a client base and taking care of my family and things like that. And so I think perspective helps you figure out what your priority should be, even while you're focused on yourself for large chunks of time in a day.
So let's dive into that a little bit more, Derek, because you mentioned, for the most part, in what you just said, you prioritize a lot of different things. And once again, I think this is a great place to start getting towards the end of our episode here. You mentioned work, you mentioned family, you mentioned friends. You're at the office right now. It's after 11 Eastern. I know you're partially here for the podcast episode, but you, what do you do to prioritize you after all the 36-hour workday, which the math isn't mathing?
Well, after the 36-hour workday, I usually sleep. You know, but yeah, no, I think that for me, what I try to do when I'm not, some days I can't do this. Some days I'm just too busy. But I like to try to go for a walk in the morning and get coffee. I do that almost every day, unless I'm really sick or extremely busy and have to push it a couple hours, or I have to order it because I'm just genuinely can't leave my desk for like a reasonable period of the day. But I like to go for a walk. I like to go get coffee. I like to walk back. I like to listen to music while I'm walking.
Okay.
I try to talk to my mom every day during lunch, even if it's an 8-minute call, a 10-minute call. I read the news every day. That's part of my ritual. I feel informed. It's something that I like to do. And then when I lay down, and I try to spend an hour with my partner watching a show in the evenings when we're eating dinner at least once a day. I don't always achieve that. Sometimes it's more like a couple of days a week, but that's a goal that I try to set for myself because it grounds me and it keeps my relationship happier
Mm,
if we spend quality time together talking
hmm
about the show and while during dinner and things like that. And then I try to see friends on when I feel like it's not going to cost me too much professionally. I will try to go have a Friday night out, or I'll try to have a Saturday evening out, and go to dinner or go out and have a few drinks or go to a movie, that kind of thing. So there are things that I do for me, throughout the day, from the first time for the first when I wake up until I go to bed, where I do, usually 30 minutes of reading the news and sort of personal things, look at sports, that kind of thing. So I try to build in stuff all throughout the day to give myself little rechargers that aren't necessarily focused on professional development, even though a lot of my day is focused on professional development. There are often times when I'm walking to go get coffee, I have to talk to one of my junior associates and get them started on something, or they have some issue. During lunch, sometimes I have to hang up on my mom because a partner's calling or because one of my junior associates is calling.
hmm
And there are times I have to skip the news and then catch up the next day. So, I try to be flexible in when I do things for me, but I always try to make time for me multiple times a day as much as I can.
Mm, I like that. I like that. That's solid. That's solid because we talk about making time for you, but the making time for you is not just all right, it's I don't have my watch on right now, but
Yeah,
it's 8:43 a.m. I'm gonna give myself these 2 minutes and then I'm good for the day. You gotta
yeah.
make time for you multiple times a day. I like that. I haven't talked about that, but that's such a fact.
Yeah, you can't. No human beings do not have the attention span or the mental fortitude to just grind all day, every day, nonstop for days and days and days. Like, and for me personally, I'm a much happier person and a much less grumpy person when somebody calls me if I've gotten my morning coffee, if I've gotten my walk in, if I've gotten to jam out to a little bit of music, if I've gotten to talk to my mom for 10 minutes about whatever the news of the day is, if I've gotten to um, unplug in the evening and chill for like 30 minutes before I go to bed. Like I'm just a much more pleasant person to interact with, both for my clients and for my associates that I work with. And
Right.
um, and if I don't, then I sometimes I can't.
Yeah.
And it has an impact. It genuinely lowers the quality of my work and it especially lowers the quality of my interactions with other people.
Mm, yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. That's I like how you said, a lot of times I want to emphasize this point and then I want people to know what you actually do if you're able to explain it. Okay, I know you do a lot of things that's going to go over a lot of people's heads, but I want to focus on this one thing real quickly here. You have to prioritize you, give yourself what you need so that you can then be better for your clients, be better for your friends, be able to be using your words, a much more pleasurable person to be around. Because if you don't take care of, if Derek doesn't take care of Derek, you might not want to be around Derek.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, what a lawyer is it's a service business. It's not much different than being a waiter or a server at a restaurant or an entertainer or a therapist. It's very
I don't mean to be rude, but you mentioned waiter and all those things. I think maybe the difference would be a few zeros, but
yeah, no, we're certainly well compensated. Um, but we, what our job is to fix problems for clients, right?
mm,
And so I deal with a certain set of problems because I do a particular type of law, which has to do with financial regulation. So primarily businesses that are in the business of either selling securities or recommending securities for you to buy, which are broker dealers and investment advisors. And so I help them comply with all the complexities that exist with the regulatory framework that governs their businesses. Um, and it's a hard job because I have to explain really difficult concepts to people who a lot of times have never encountered them, especially like when it's a non-U.S. person. Explaining to them like the complexities of U.S. law and how we have like state and federal and we have all these agencies with these rules that like differ from the statutes, and then there's guidance that sort of changes the way that you read certain words in the rule. And there's like no action positions where they said, yeah, that's what the rule says, but like actually, if you do this to this and this, you don't have to follow the rule exactly. And so, sort of knowing all of that body of law, and then being able to, when a client says, I want to do XYZ, I want to be able to enable comments on my LinkedIn post. What regulatory things does that bring up? And then I have to tell them, well, if you delete comments, then it's going to be subject to the marketing rule under the Advisors Act. And it's these business things that they want to do. I have to then help them figure out all the regulatory things that they have to do in order to comply with, to be able to actually do the things that they want to do in their business.
mm, all right. Wow. If you want to learn more about that, um,
That's another podcast.
that's another episode. That's another episode for sure.
Yes.
But Derek, I really appreciate you giving your time. I have so much gratitude for you and all the work that you do. You remain a extremely giving and honest person, and I'm happy that you're in my corner.
Well,
Um,
same here. And it was a pleasure to be on. Again, I'm honored to be on your 100th podcast.
yeah, absolutely. I was like, I was excited because once again, you go through a lot of different things, and through your workday and working as much as you do. And so I thought this was a really neat conversation. Now, I want to so it's gonna be a little bit different than what I was anticipating here, how we're gonna end. I typically end with one word. I'm gonna ask you two questions. I want one word for both. Maybe it's gonna be the same. But you mentioned something earlier about living a life where you were poor. And at one point in time, you lived in a trailer that had no running water. What's one word that Derek now would say to Derek then?
Patience.
Mm, okay. Well, we said that's something that you struggled with then.
Uh, no. I think I've generally usually had patience and like delayed gratification and stuff. But what I didn't have, I guess, was I guess maybe I'm changing my word a bit, but I guess I didn't have hope or belief that things would be easier or better. But as I've gotten older, and worked hard and seen my parents work hard, and things I've gotten lucky in some respects. Things have really improved from the time frame when I had to go outside to use the bathroom.
Yeah.
So patience and perseverance and things will get better, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, absolutely. Doing your thing at Decker Law Firm, absolutely. Corporate law. I don't know if I mean you tell me. I don't know if that Derek knew that he was going to turn into this one.
No, not at all. My parents always thought I should be a lawyer and always thought I would be a lawyer. They always said I was argumentative, which is funny because my job is not very adversarial or argumentative these days. It's much more counseling and helping people find solutions to problems. But when you watch TV, what you always see is people arguing it when they're lawyers. So my
Dum
parents are
dum.
a lawyer.
Yeah, you get the dum dum, the law and
Yeah,
order, right? Yeah.
exactly.
you know, I'll just say this. Because it's funny, for the people listening and hearing about Derek and I and our friendship. I don't consider you argumentative. I would say you are just very facts based. If it's not factual, you're gonna call it out. That's what I've learned about you. I don't know if you agree with that. I just don't put you don't seek arguments for sake of seeking arguments, right?
You
It's
might be
very
the first person other than me that said that about me. But I appreciate it. No, look, I
we
don't think
typically
that
agree. So
right, exactly. Yeah, no, I don't think I'm argumentative, but I also am not shy.
yeah.
And I tend to seek out understanding. And sometimes that means questioning people on things that I don't understand or don't necessarily agree with.
Mm-hmm.
And so having those discussions, I think a lot of people I guess that's not a normal behavior. And so people perceive it, I think, as argumentative. And maybe it is. And maybe that's what people mean when they say argumentative. But for me, I'm not trying to argue for argument's sake. I'm usually trying to understand where somebody's coming from, and asking questions to try to get to a better understanding on both sides of the discussion.
I think that we're both right about you. The rest of the world can be wrong. It's fine. Uh,
Love it.
this is, one of my episodes coming out in May, Mental Health Awareness Month. So to wrap up, one word that describes your thoughts on mental health and someone struggling with their mental health, if it's because of their work, if it's because of their lack of work, it's because, just struggling to get to where it is they want to be. What's one word that you would tell that person to make their mental health a priority and just making mental health awareness, make sure that they know that it's real? What's one word that you would share?
Good habits.
Okay.
That's two words, but close enough.
I don't typically allow that, but we'll let it go. Good habits, excellent. I might make an episode about good habits here in the next couple of weeks. Actually, I think that's solid.
Yeah, I love it.
Oh man, Derek, thank you so much for your time, man. I appreciate you so much, and just being able to learn more about you and your story. I know that it's been a positive impact on all of our listeners here today. So in those moments where you don't have hope, in those moments where you don't know what next looks like, have patience for yourself, have determination, and bring an intensity to that. Be intense about the things that you do. And I think those are some things that we learned from Derek's journey of being poor, of albinism, of just going through Harvard Law's, issues with depression, and there's a whole article about that. I think Harvard should look into that. Besides the point, nevertheless, maybe they are doing things. I don't know. You could tell me better, but I just want to thank you so much for all the things that you've gone through, the light that you are in this world, and I can't wait to see all the continued great things that you continue to do. And I know it's happening. So congratulations.
Thanks a lot, Tarik. You too. Congratulations on your 100th episode.
There you go. Welcome, everybody. This is the Speak Your Vision podcast. Not only I am Vision of Hope, but we are Vision of Hope. Happy Mental Health Awareness Month, everybody. Let's get it.